Samson is the oldest locomotive in Canada, arriving in May 1839, and she is a rare survivor of a locomotive built by Timothy Hackworth. Sometimes described as the first locomotive to operate in Canada, that honour, of course, falls to a Stephenson locomotive which did so in July 1836. Samson, however, was the first locomotive in Canada to run on iron rails. Samson was built under subcontract from George and John Rennie of London by Timothy Hackworth of the Soho Works in Shildon. Samson and two other locomotives, the Hercules and the John Buddle, were ordered in February 1838 by the General Mining Association of London, the owners of the Albion coal mines in Canada. Interestingly, their officers were close to those of the Rennies, and they chose as their consultant John Buddle of Newcastle upon Tyne, one of the most experienced coal viewers of his age. The order for Samson specified it had to be completed in just 5 months from the point of order, so that it could be delivered to Canada before Pictou Harbour froze. Samson appears to have been tested on the Stockton and Darlington Railway in mid-August 1838, but missed the crucial shipping date. Instead, it was shipped together with Hercules and John Buddle from Newcastle upon Tyne to Pictou in April 1839, arriving in May. The Albion Mines Railway opened in September 1839 and began operating in the following year. Operation of the 6-mile line was seasonal, carrying coal for only about 6 months of the year, coal exports ceasing when Pictou Harbour became icebound during the winter. Travelling with the locomotive to Nova Scotia was George Davidson, who helped build the locomotives in Shildon and would settle in Canada to work with Samson for the rest of his career. Samson operated coal trains on the 6-mile line until 1867, but continued to be used in emergencies until 1885, albeit with the boiler pressure reduced from 50 to 30 psi. It then had a very varied career in preservation until finding an indoor permanent home at the Museum of Industry at Stellarton in Nova Scotia. Samson is carried on 6 4-foot diameter cast iron plug wheels. They appear to have been of local manufacture and thus replacements for the originals. The 4 leading wheels are sprung, but the driven wheels at the rear are unsprung to accommodate the use of vertical cylinders. The locomotive has no frame, with the boiler bracket being secured to the top of the axle boxes. The boiler itself and how it is carried on the wheels is very odd. The barrel is 13 feet 4 inches long, 4 feet 4 inches in diameter, and made from low Moore wrought iron plates, and is of the long plate type. The boiler contains a single wrought iron return flue, so that the chimney and firebox are at the same end of the boiler. The present chimney and external flue arrangements are later modifications. The original chimney was a simple extension of the flue tube, secured with a flange ring to the boiler end plate, but bulging and cracking of the boiler end plate where it fastened suggests it was too heavy, resulting in damage to that end of the boiler. The opposite end of the boiler has its end plate set not on the end of the boiler as a cap, but within the boiler barrel by some 2 feet 6 inches. This feature, however, is visible on another possible Hackworth locomotive, the Keller, built for the East Hetton colliery around 1838. The domed end of the boiler is inset, with the cylinders and so forth mounted on the open end of the boiler. On Samson, the boiler itself extends into this space in a curious duck's tail extension, over which the steam dome is carried. The valve gear and water pumps are carried within the open end of the boiler barrel. In fact, Keller and Samson agree within an inch or so of overall dimensions. The pair of vertical cylinders have a stroke of 16.5 inches and a bore of 15 inches. The piston rod is guided by parallel motion. They drive the rearmost set of coupled wheels. There is an enormous overhang at the chimney end of the locomotive, making it look very ungainly. This was perhaps to relieve the unsprung driven wheels from weight, or, as Dr. Michael Bailey and Dr. Glitherow have suggested, evidence of a major rebuild during the lifetime of Samson. Doctors Bailey and Glitherow have postulated 3 possible configurations of the locomotive, the most convincing, agreeing with the design of the Keller, being that the wheels were originally mounted further toward the firebox and chimney end of the boiler, so the entire weight of the boiler was taken directly on the wheels, in the manner of other contemporary Hackworth locomotives. And to enable all 3 axles to be sprung, the cylinders drove a jackshaft at the rear end, which transmitted its power to the 6 coupled wheels via outside coupling rods, again as typical of Hackworth practice at that time. Unfortunately, Samson's coal and water tenders are both missing. But, as a result of an archaeological survey of the locomotive by Drs. Bailey and Glitherow, they conclude that 90% of the in-service fabric of Samson is still retained, which is quite remarkable for such an early survivor. Samson is truly an icon of Canadian railways, and an early surviving example of the British locomotive export trade, which supplied locomotives around the world. I hope you have enjoyed this video on Samson, and if you have, please leave a comment below. Please also like, share and subscribe, and click the notification bell. I'd also like to thank my many Patreon supporters for their generosity, which helps keep Rail Story producing the content you all enjoy. And I look forwards to seeing you all next time on Rail Story.